All right, everyone, we are live for our second reading of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe from the Chronicles of Narnia by C.S. Lewis. I'm wondering how many of you are tuning in from the shelter you built today after watching Jordan's shelter tutorial. I'm hoping to see a few pictures, and if you do, take us on Instagram so we can see what you have created. We're going to jump right in with our reading today. It is a bit of a short one today. We are reading chapter 3. And just to catch you all up if you missed the first one, we have followed Lucy into the wardrobe in the land of Narnia, where it's always winter and never Christmas, and where she met the Fawn Tumnus, who was trying to kidnap her for the White Witch, but has had a change of heart and is sending her back to England through the wardrobe. So here we are at chapter 3. Edmund and Wardrobe. Lucy ran out of the empty room in the passage and found the other three. "It's all right," she repeated. "Come back." "What on earth are you talking about, Lucy?" asked Susan. "Why," said Lucy in amazement, "haven't you all been wondering where I was?" "So you've been hiding, have you?" said Peter. "Poor old Lou, hiding and nobody noticed. You'll have to hide longer than that if you want people to stop looking for you." "But I've been away for hours and hours," said Lucy. The others all stared at one another. "Batty," said Edmund, tapping his head. "Quite batty." "What do you mean, Lou?" asked Peter. "What I said," answered Lucy. "It was just after breakfast I went into the wardrobe, and I've been away for hours and hours and had tea, and all sorts of things have happened." "Don't be silly, Lucy," said Susan. "We've only just come out of that room a moment ago, and you were there then." "She's not being silly at all," said Peter. "She's just making up a story for fun, aren't you, Lou? And why shouldn't she?" "No, Peter, I'm not," she said. It's a magic wardrobe. There's a wood inside it, and it's snowing, and there's a fawn and a witch, and it's called Narnia, and come and see." The others did not know what to think, but Lucy was so excited that they all went back with her into the room. She rushed ahead of them, flung open the door of the wardrobe, and cried, "Now, go in and see for yourselves." "Why, you goose," said Susan, putting her head inside and pulling the fur coats apart. "It's just an ordinary wardrobe. Look, there's the back of it." Then everyone looked in and pulled the coats apart, and they all saw, Lucy herself saw, a perfectly ordinary wardrobe. There was no wood and no snow, only the back of the wardrobe with hooks on it. Peter went in and rapped his knuckles on it to make sure it was solid. "A jolly good hoax, Lou," he said as he came out again. "You have really taken us in, I must admit. We half believed you." "But it wasn't a hoax at all," said Lucy. "Really and truly, it was all different a moment ago. Honestly, it was, I promise." "Come, Lou," said Peter. "That's going a bit far. You've had your joke. Hadn't you better drop it now?" Lucy grew very red in the face and tried to say something, though she hardly knew what she was trying to say, and burst into tears. For the next few days, she was very miserable. She could have made it up with the others quite easily at any moment, if she could have brought herself to say that the whole thing was only a story and made up for fun. But Lucy was a very truthful girl, and she knew that she was really in the right, and she could not bring herself to say this. The others who thought she was telling a lie, and a silly lie too, made her very unhappy. The two elder ones did this without meaning to do it, but Edmund could be spiteful, and on this occasion he was spiteful. He sneered and jeered at Lucy and kept on asking her if she found any other new countries and other cupboards all over the house. What made it worse was that these days ought to have been delightful. The weather was fine, bathing, and Lucy could not properly enjoy any of it. And so things went on until the next wet day. That day, when it came to the afternoon, and there was still no sign of a break in the weather, they decided to play hide and seek. Susan was it, and as soon as the others scattered to hide, Lucy went to the room where the wardrobe was. She did not mean to hide in the wardrobe, because she knew that would only set the others talking again about the whole wretched business. But she did want to have one more look inside it, for this time she was beginning to wonder herself if it had not been a dream. The house was so large and complicated, full of hiding places, that she thought she would have time to have one look into the wardrobe and then hide somewhere else. But as soon as she reached it, she heard steps in the passage outside, and then there was nothing for it but to jump into the wardrobe and hold the door closed behind her. She did not shut it properly because she knew that it is very silly to shut oneself into a wardrobe, even if it's not a magic. It was of Edmund into the wardrobe himself. Not because he thought it was a particularly good place to hide, but because he wanted to go on teasing her about her imaginary country. He opened the door. There were coats hanging up as usual, and a smell of mothballs and darkness and silence, and no sign of Lucy. "She thinks I'm Susan come to catch her," said Edmund to himself, "and so she's keeping very quiet in the back." He jumped in and shut the door, forgetting what a very foolish thing it is to do so. Then he began to feel about for Lucy in the dark. He had expected to find her in a few seconds and was very surprised when he did not. He decided to open the door again and let in some light, but he could not find the door either. He didn't like it at all and began groping wildly in every direction. He even shouted out, "Lucy! Lou, where are you? I know you're here." There was no answer, and Edmund noticed that his own voice had a covered, but a kind of open-air sound. He also noticed that he was unexpectedly close and saw light. "Thank goodness," said Edmund. "The door must have swung open of its own accord." He forgot all about Lucy and went towards the light, which he thought was the open door of the wardrobe. Instead of finding himself stepping out into the spare room, he found himself stepping out from the shadow of some dark, thick fir trees into an open place in the middle of the wood. There was a crisp, dry snow under his feet, and more snow lying on the branches of the trees. Overhead there was a pale blue sky, the sort of sky one sees on a fine winter day in the morning. Straight ahead of him, he saw between the tree trunks the sun, just rising, very red and clear. Everything was perfectly living creature in that. Like we're having. Okay, let's try that again. There was not even a robin or a squirrel among the trees, and the wood stretched as far as he could see in every direction. He shivered. He now remembered that he had been looking for Lucy, and also how unpleasant he had been to her about her imaginary country, which now turned out not to have been imaginary at all. He thought that she might be somewhere quite close, so he shouted, "Lucy! Lucy, I'm here too, Edmund!" There was no answer. "She's angry about all the things I've been saying lately," thought Edmund. And though he did not like to admit that he had been wrong, he also did not much like being alone in this strange, cold, quiet place. So he shouted again, "I say, Lou, I'm sorry I didn't believe you. I see now that you were right all along. Do come out, make it pax." Still there was no answer. Just like a girl, Edmund said to himself, sulking somewhere and won't accept an apology. He looked around him again and decided he did not much like this place, and he'd almost made up his mind to go home, when he heard very far off in the wood a sound of bells. He listened, and the sound came nearer and nearer, and at last there swept into sight a sledge drawn by 2 reindeer. The reindeer were about the size of Shetland ponies, and their hair was so white that even the snow hardly looked white compared with them. Their branching horns were gilded and shone like something on fire when the sunrise caught them. Their harness was of scarlet leather and covered with bells. On the sledge, driving the reindeer, sat a fat dwarf who would have been about 3 feet high if he'd been standing. He was dressed in polar bear's fur, and on his head he wore a red hood with a long gold tassel hanging from its point. His huge beard covered his knees and served him instead of a rug. But behind him, on a much higher seat in the middle of the sledge, sat a very different person. A great lady, taller than any woman that Edmund had ever seen. That's a tongue twister. Try saying that 10 times fast. She also was covered in white fur up to her throat and held a long, straight golden wand in her right hand and wore a gold crown on her head. Her face was white, not merely pale, but white like snow or paper or icing sugar, except for her very red mouth. It was a beautiful face in other respects, but proud and cold and stern. The sledge was a fine sight as it came sweeping towards Edmund, with the bells jingling and the dwarf cracking his whip and the snow flying up on each side of it. "Stop," said the lady, and the dwarf pulled the reindeer up so sharp that they almost sat down. Then they recovered themselves and stood champing their bits and blowing. In the frosty air, the breath coming out of their nostrils looked like smoke. "What, pray, are you?" said the lady, looking hard at Edmund. My name's Edmund," said Edmund, rather awkwardly. He did not like the way she had looked at him. The lady frowned. "Is that how you address a queen?" she asked, looking sterner than ever. "I beg your pardon, your majesty, I didn't know," said Edmund. "Not know the Queen of Narnia?" cried she. "Ha! You shall know us better hereafter. But I repeat, what are you?" "Please, your majesty," said Edmund, "I don't know what you mean. I'm at school. At least I was. It's the holidays now." End of chapter 3. So we have an interesting new character joining our story. I think it's the same queen that Thomas was talking about. Now, thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you can always catch up if you're falling behind on YouTube. We'll keep them all there on Trek's account. And be sure to tune in tomorrow morning. We've got our daily devotional video, as well as you can zoom in at, I believe, 10:30. You can Zoom with a Trek counselor. 10 o'clock is the devotional. And if you're not yet on the list for that, go ahead and email trekcamp@trekcamp.org, and Peyton will send you the link for the Zoom meeting. So thank you so much. I hope you all have a good night and sweet dreams. And I will see you all tomorrow. I think I'll be back in my usual space. We'll see. I'm visiting a friend today. But I'm looking forward to chapter 4 of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We'll see you then, everyone. Good night.